Thank you for being here with us. Let's take a seat, please. Diogo Lopes, we are at a year that is quite atypical to the ones before. If we were in a different edition of this major event, perhaps this room would be filled. In any case, we spoke earlier on that we are lucky to be able to recover some sort of normality piece by piece, and above all, being aware of the challenges we face, whether in healthcare and not only. So what are your expectations regarding the EHEALTHSUMMIT.PT 2021? First of all, good morning, and good morning, everybody. My expectations are high. I have great expectations. I know, because I've been with this process, that the response of the various healthcare bodies, and particularly SPMS, which organizes eHealth Summit, was very positive in very trying times for everybody. So this pandemic, we have that sentence that people say, you should never let a good opportunity or a good crisis go amiss. And the opportunities that this pandemic created to raise awareness of the importance of digital transformation in healthcare is an opportunity that we cannot waste at all. There was a lot of work already because we cannot do anything without being prepared for it, but it was really accelerated during pandemic. So this acceleration cannot be wasted, and is something that will improve the health of the Portuguese people in a context that we all want post-pandemic. In this scenario of major challenges, and today we have the space to discuss, we have the room to discuss a lot of them. What are the most pressing issues? The most pressing issue in this pandemic context was telemedicine or remote medicine, i.e. remote access to people to healthcare, where the risk of going to healthcare institutions was quite high. So there was a greater advantage in being at home and having a consultation online. This capacity, this capability, or this field of telemedicine grew in a very significant way over the year, and we learned a lot from it. As we were discussing earlier on, the fact that we have to act means that the fears of the action are set aside when compared to the good that we want to have. And we learned a lot about what we can do for the future and how we can better use these remote medicine tools that we've been developing over the few years and which were quite used during this year. On the other hand, the information on the pandemic and the interoperability between the systems was highly tested during 2020 and has continued to be tested in 2021. So this interoperability, the capacity to create new systems, for example, Trace COVID, which was created very quickly and was an essential tool to contain the pandemic, is something that will be used for a lot of other things in health, because health is not just about COVID-19, of course. So everything that we used for the pandemic will be used in various other fields and every other diseases. As you stated, and quite well, health is much more than the pandemic. So let's look at other fields and other issues in the health sector that the pandemic lay dormant, but we're very much focused on COVID, of course. It is inevitable that the pandemic will dominate the discussion panels and what we will be hearing over these next few days, right? Yes, of course, it will be what will be most discussed. We still don't know the impacts of this pandemic. I'm not talking about health in the strict sense. We don't know the social impacts. We don't know the mental health impacts, for instance. We don't know the outcome. But this is something that we learned a lot from. I don't doubt that for a second. As for telehealth, remote health, that has taken on a greater dimension this year. We spoke about technologies and systems that already existed, but they had to be put in place very quickly to respond to the pandemic. Are there tools and willingness for these mechanisms to be proximity mechanisms? Of course, what we want is greater access. In health, prevention is always more affordable than treatment or curing diseases. So the more we prevent, the earlier we reach people, the earlier we are able to change lifestyles that lead to certain pathologies, or they're more likely to cause them. It will be better for society. It will be better for the whole system. The financial sustainability of healthcare is a very vast subject that is very much present in all our acts. Obviously, in pandemic is not a priority, isn't always a priority, as was clear in the last few years, but it needs to be a concern. We know that this wasn't priority now, but we know that this whole path of technological evolution, digital and technological evolution, having a more personalized medicine, is more expensive than mass medicine, so to speak. It is more effective, but it is also more expensive. So anything that will help us to be more efficient and obtain better results in health, giving more access to people, is something that needs to be seen and will continue to be seen. Obviously, there will be good outcomes from the pandemic also, and this will be one of them. When we are talking about technology as an ally in various sectors like health, which is what we're discussing today, do we also have the challenge of leaving no one behind, i.e. the challenge of including people so that they aren't left out of these new healthcare systems? Of course. The issue of inequality is one that is very dear to our government. In fact, it is one of the pillars of our government's program, and technology has the potential to increase inequalities, but it is also a good solution to decrease these inequalities. So we need to focus a lot on our citizens. The citizens that have more access and for whom the screen is super easy and they don't even remember what making a phone call is, because you go on an app and you schedule an appointment, for example. A part of the population already does this, the younger generations, but we also have a generation that is far from being digital literate. So basically, we need to have mediators, so to speak, mediators between a system that will not stop moving forward, it can't stop moving forward, and the people who don't have access to these technologies. For instance, SNS24 counter is one of the ways that we found that we have several throughout the country, and it's giving these people access, because when we act with the parish councils, the people who work in these places act as moderators or brokers between the lack of digital literacy in people and the technological capabilities that the system already has. So that is very much in our action to increase digital literacy and to make sure that no one is left behind because of this. We are at a digital transition phase where there is a lot to be done, but what stock can we take of this in Portugal? Oh, I think it is very positive. Portugal is quite pioneering in these fields. We have a huge experimentation capacity. We're great at innovating. And this can be seen not just in health, but other sectors too. The digital transition isn't health or economy or education. It affects every single sector at the same time, and all of them operate and fuel each other in a system that benefits from scales and benefits from having more focus at the moment. I think that anyone, and I'm 45 years old, to think about what the health system was 20 years ago, the way we can access it, it has nothing to do with what we're doing today. Even just the other day, I was thinking about x-rays, for instance. We all remember having x-rays in those on film. I don't think I've seen one for years. Everything is imaging now, and it is much more logical. We use up a lot less resources if we do this. So this evolution is something that I think the country is quite open to have. And health is quite open to this. And we cannot forget that health is a field where knowledge, where training, where lifelong learning happens almost naturally. It is part of the whole idea of medicine. Progression, always progression of knowledge, always spreading knowledge among the people, and the digital transition is absolutely essential in this. You've already mentioned a series of topics that we will be discussing over the next few days: the SNS24 counters, telemedicine, proximity, and humanization, which cannot be overlooked, as well as literacy and inclusion for all citizens. We also have the issue of data in health. This is also very important when we're talking about digital health, right? Yes, it is absolutely fundamental. It is one of the priorities of the Portuguese presidency of the European Union for health. It is a subject that has potential gains and potential hazards too. There is nothing more valuable than data, health data for a population. What we can withdraw, the knowledge we can withdraw from these data is fundamental, but wrong use of data, of health data, are quite dangerous. So this misappropriation of data is something that we need to take care of. We know that the systems allow us to evolve, and we know that it is fundamental to have information on people. A European Union where I can be in any country of the EU, and if I have a health issue, the hospital that I go to or the healthcare professional I go to will have access to my data in an almost immediate way, is something that will benefit everybody's health. And this at a European context. So the exchange of data is complex, and there are a series of issues that need to be solved. But access in terms of epidemiological studies or the incidence of diseases, for instance, those are fundamental because they will help us find better strategies to fight them, find better ways to do so, as well as the risks of privacy that exist. So we need to do this in a particularly secure way. This is something that we are working on, and I believe we will have news quite soon. The idea of a health European Union is an absolutely fascinating path that will lead to gains in healthcare for 500 million people, and it is a path that we want to be on. So we have challenging years ahead of us, yes. At the end of these 2 days, there are only 2 days, but we will be discussing a lot of subjects. What would you like to have here in the public debate? I think the most important thing for public debate is the exchange of ideas and the exchange of information. Digital transformation. Normally, EHEALTHSUMMIT.PT and all of these issues of it innovation being extraordinarily sexy and all that, we normally associate these things, right? But It's not. The point is that digital transformation is part of our life. It is no longer new. It is no longer something that we need to attain. It is part of our life now, and it needs to be part of our life now. So I believe that if we are able to spread the idea that nothing is done nowadays without digital transformation, and above all, nothing is done against the movement that will not stop, that is great. And everyone will be more focused on a very clear goal, which is to have more efficient healthcare at the service of our citizens with more access and more sustainable. So this was a step we needed to be on in terms of evolution. The pandemic accelerated. Yes, that is it. The pandemic accelerated. We already had the foundation, but this was clearly shown in the way in which we were able to handle the pandemic. Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Diogo Lopes, the Secretary of State for Health. I hope you have a wonderful day and that we will continue here for our event. Thank you.